7 days ago, Washington was playing for a national championship. Advanced 1 week, and now they've got a new head coach. Let the rebuild begin.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Man, what a tumultuous week it has been for fans of the Dogs donning the purple and gold up in the Pacific Northwest, right? You were getting ready to play Michigan this time just 1 week ago, and going into the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, this was a one-possession game, of course, before Michigan really blew this thing open late in this game. But then you see Kalen DeBoer depart the program down south for Alabama. And you already knew a lot of players were going to be leaving, declaring for the NFL draft. But then when Kalen left the program, you saw a lot of players get into the transfer portal, and players that possibly could have made an impact if Kalen were to return for 2024. And then the cupboard got a lot more bare up there in Seattle. But have no fear, there is light at the end of the tunnel as Washington is going fishing, bringing in Jedd Fisch from down south in Tucson from Arizona. Now, I'm going to get into Jedd, and I think this is a really good hire for Washington. But first, I want to talk about the first thought that popped into my head when I heard that Fisch was leaving the Wildcats to become the new boss of the Huskies. Power to, power to, power to. 2024 is the start of a brand new era in college athletics, and you are seeing a big-time separation between the Big Ten and the SEC at the top, and then conferences like the Big 12 and the ACC after that. I believe you're going to see more of this. Up-and-coming, younger head coaches that have a really good year in the Big 12 conference or in the ACC. When these Big Ten jobs open, when these SEC jobs open, and these teams, especially in a 12-team college football playoff era, create more of a separation towards the top, you're going to see a lot more of these moves. Cite Florida State. If you're a team that's not in the Power 2, you're going to try to get there. If you're a coach that's not in the Power 2, you're going to try to get there. Because people are going to find out this is going to be the highest level of college football. Even though technically they reside in the FBS with the Big 12, with the ACC, with the Group of Five, there's going to be no question. The Big Ten and the SEC are going to separate themselves more now than ever. USC, Oregon, Washington, teams like that now in the Big Ten. Texas and Oklahoma down there in the SEC. There's going to be more money, more opportunities, more resources at a Big Ten or an SEC program. And this is what this screamed to me, because Arizona had a really good team in the Big 12 entering 2024, looking forward to 2024. They possibly had one of the best teams entering that conference, a playoff team that could get a first-round bye, yet their coach still goes up north to a Washington team that is in rebuild mode. That should maybe make more of a statement than anything. Let's start talking about Jedd Fisch, because Washington, I believe, did as good of a job in a short period of time that you can do, because these things need to go very, very quick. When you have a roster, when you had things trending the way they were for Washington, you needed to make a hire, and you needed to make a good hire as quickly as possible. And sometimes for those things to all get mixed together, it's not the easiest thing in the world to hire a good coach that quick. But I believe Washington was able to do it. I believe Washington was able to at least slow the bleeding right now and give yourself a bright future. But these next few weeks are going to be very important for Jedd Fisch as he descends upon the state of Washington. So when we take a look at Jedd, and I said this in my video about Kalen DeBoer leaving, you needed a program builder. You needed someone who understood what he was getting into in Seattle, Washington. This guy has been through it. And where he's starting at Washington was not quite at the low point of where he started in his first head coaching job, by the way, at Arizona. The Wildcats were 0-5 in 2020. That was the year before Jedd Fisch got there. He got there in 2000. and 21. They were not in a good place. They were towards the bottom of the Pac-12. They went 1-11 in his first year in Tucson. They went up to 5 wins the next year, just shy of a bowl game. But this past year was when it really took a jump, winning 9 games in the regular season, beating Oklahoma in the bowl game, and finishing 10-3. But although they didn't reach a bowl game in 2022, that year was significant for another reason. Arizona, although they've had good seasons here and there, they're not known as a team that can certainly recruit at an extremely high level. But in Jedd Fisch's second season on the job, he was able to recruit the 22nd ranked recruiting class in that year, according to 24/7 Sports. And it includes a couple of players that might be future Washington Huskies. See, there's multiple layers to this onion. One, he was able to recruit down there at Arizona, the number 3 class in the Pac-12 that year, well above USC, and well above the program that he is taking over Washington. Oh, by the way, that was a recruiting class that was recruited by Kalen DeBoer. Recruiting, as of late, is something that Washington fans have brought up as a concern. But maybe, just maybe, Jedd Fisch can get the Huskies into that top 25 consistently. That would be a big victory for Washington and the development of their program. Let's get back to that class, because what happened with what happened with Arizona this year might be a little bit of a precursor and a preview of what could happen with Washington in 2024. You got to talk about Noah Fifita, a 3-star quarterback in the class of 2022. When Jayden de Laura went down against Stanford, Fifita took over, and man, did he look good. He never surrendered that quarterback job back to Jayden de Laura. That's how good he was. Over 2,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions at the quarterback position. We'll see what happens at Arizona, but I think step number 1 for Jedd Fisch is to take advantage of that 30-day window. Okay? It's not great right now for a program like in Arizona. I understand that. However you feel about the transfer portal with the 30-day window opening up, I'm going to put it as bluntly as I possibly can. Jedd Fisch, raid your guys that you brought into Arizona. You got to raid that Wildcats roster, because this was an Arizona roster that might have been one of the top rosters in the Big 12 entering 2024. And if you want to get Washington to a solid spot, a respectable spot in the Big 10 in 2024, grabbing some of those players that you were able to recruit into Tucson could be the first step into getting Washington back to that type of solid level where this first season under Jedd Fisch can be a decent season up there in Seattle. We mentioned Noah Fifita, some other players, Jonah Coleman, the leading rusher they could go after. But one player, right, we talk about the wide receivers at Washington that were so good to maybe continue that trend. How about Teteroa McMillan, the leading receiver for Arizona, long, lanky kid, highly recruited wide receiver, 1,400 yards, over 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns this past season, one of the best receivers in the Pac-12. If you can find a way to get McMillan, another McMillan, in Seattle, by the way, and Noah Fifita to transfer over to Washington, all of a sudden, what was looking bleak a couple of days ago, all of a sudden now, Washington fans take a little bit of a deep breath and say everything's going to be all right. Jed is here to make everything all right. Now, when we talk about Jedd Fisch, this is something that's got to be brought up. He has job hopped a lot. Now, not every time it hasn't been his fault. Sometimes it takes people longer to catch on because of the tumultuous nature at times. A lot of turnover from college jobs to NFL jobs. He's kind of alternated between those two worlds over his coaching career as well. His longest 10-year job was when was he an offensive assistant with the Baltimore Ravens from 2004 to 2007. He was not retained by John Harbaugh, so there was a coaching change that resulted in his departure from the Ravens at that point. This Arizona tenure for 3 years, that was his second longest reign with a given team. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind. He has gone from job to job to job. He has not stayed at a particular job for a long period of time. You got to have that in the back of your head, Husky fans. But for Washington, you have to surround him with a place that he wants to stay for a very long time. Now, being a Power 2 job, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, certainly helps. But if he gets Washington to a playoff in 2 years or 3 years, if the Huskies find themselves in a similar situation like Kalen DeBoer, how is this administration going to learn from their mistakes and keep Jedd Fisch around? At that point, they would still be partial members of the Big Ten, so they wouldn't have their full share to unload $10 million, $11 million, whatever could happen with Jedd Fisch possibly at that time. So they need to find a way to make this feel home and an environment that Jedd Fisch wants to stay for a long period of time. This is a great hire. This makes things a little bit less bleak. Certainly in Seattle, things were not great, especially on the Twitter sphere for some Washington fans during this time. But this is a step back in the right direction. Washington has proved in their history, Chris Peterson, Kalen DeBoer, that they can bounce back. They can rebuild. Washington has the pieces. I think they have a coach that can build up a program in a short period of time in Jedd Fisch. Husky fans, I think you're in good hands with Jedd Fisch.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.